We'll be doing a prediction video for another one of the biggest games of week one of the 2024 college football season, USC versus LSU. USC, I think, is underrated this year. The AP only has them ranked 23rd, and none of the magazines are very high on them. I think they're going to surprise this year and have a really good season. And LSU, I'm not real high on them. I think they'll be at best as good as they were last season. I think that they really don't have much of a chance at all of going to the college football playoff. I picked them to go 9-3, and I think there's a much better chance that they go 8-4 this year than 10-2. I actually think USC is a better team overall this year than LSU, but it is really close, and each team has some advantages in this game. So at quarterback, I would give USC an advantage. So Miller Moss is confirmed to be USC's starting quarterback this season, and I think that was the right choice. Uh, and Miller Moss, I would have in the top 10 of my Heisman candidates list. Of course, I didn't do a top 10, but I think that he would be higher than 10 in my possibilities to win the Heisman this year. Not just because he threw for 370 something yards in the bowl game last year. It's because of who his coach is, too. Lincoln Riley has coached three Heisman winning quarterbacks and nearly four if you include Jalen Hurts, who finished second for the Heisman Trophy in 2019, and that was the year that Joe Burrow was the Heisman winner, and you know how good he was at LSU. And if it hadn't been for that, probably any other year, Jalen Hurts would have won it, and he would have had four Heisman winners at this point. I wouldn't really be surprised at all if Miller Moss ended up winning the Heisman this year. But Garrett Nussmeier, I think he's a great pocket passer, and I think that he'll have a big numbers this year at LSU passing. Uh, I don't though think that he has any chance of winning the Heisman Trophy. So at wide receiver, it'll be something interesting to watch in this game because LSU and USC both replaced their top two wide receivers from last season. It'll be interesting to see who becomes the go-to wide receiver for each team. I think that for USC it's going to be Zachariah Branch, and I think for LSU it's going to be Kyron Lacey. So I think that LSU will take more of a step back at wide receiver this year than USC will because LSU lost two first round wide receivers, Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas, two of the best wide receivers they've ever had. And even though Todd Washington and Brendan Rice were really good receivers for USC last season, USC was so deep at wide receiver that none of their wide receivers were able to put up huge numbers. So they've got a lot of young wide receivers that are very talented that should be ready to start for them this year. But I do like both teams' wide receiver units. I like the two transfer wide receivers that LSU brought in, and tight end I think will be an advantage for LSU in this game with Mason Taylor, who's a very good tight end, and USC doesn't really have a great tight end, at least not as of right now. And Mason Taylor, I think, will get more catches this year than he ever has uh, because LSU has lost two first round wide receivers. And Jaden Daniels, is a going. So at running back, neither team here I think is great. LSU, they've got several decent running backs on their team, but no running back on their team has been great in college. And if you don't keep up with college football like I do, you probably couldn't even name an LSU running back. I think they're taking a big step back running the football this year. They lost Logan Diggs, who was their only really good running back last season, who's now with Ole Miss. And of course, Jaden Daniels leaving will hurt the run game more than losing Diggs, who was an actual running back. And USC, I think, does have an advantage at the running back position in this game by a little bit because at least they have Woody Marks now from Mississippi State, who is a very experienced and very solid running back. He started 32 college games. Now, Woody Marks isn't the type of running back that is going to run for 1,500 yards. But he's the type of running back that can probably get drafted next year. And on the line of scrimmage, overall, I would give LSU an advantage by a little bit, but that's not because I think that they're better than USC on both sides. It's because of their offensive line being so much better than USC's is. LSU's offensive line might be top five in the country this year. It's around the level of teams like Alabama and Georgia and Oregon and Texas and Ohio State's offensive lines. I'd probably rank it at fifth behind Georgia, Alabama, Texas, and Oregon, and probably just ahead of Ohio State's offensive line. LSU's all five of their starters on their offensive line are going to play in the NFL. And USC's offensive line, I think, is going to be improved this year. I don't think it's going to be horrible 2 years in a row, but I still don't think it's going to be very good. But good news for USC in this game is I don't think that will matter, and because LSU's defensive line is going to be a big problem for them this year. They don't have anybody on their defensive line that has been any good in college, so I think that USC will be able to keep Miller Moss from getting sacked a lot in this game, and they'll be able to run the football. And on the defensive line, I think USC actually has an advantage over LSU. Now, I'm not real high on the USC defensive line, but at least they have some good players like Bear Alexander, who transferred there from Georgia last year, who I think has a chance to be an All American player this year. And at linebacker, LSU does, I think, have a little bit of an advantage here. They've got Harold Perkins and Greg Penn, who is one of the best linebacker combinations in the country this year. Harold Perkins can be a game changer player by himself. He makes a lot of tackles and he's a really good pass rusher. He was a all American player in 2022. Now, I do think that USC does have a pretty good linebacker unit too. LSU's is one of the best linebacker units of starters in the country, but USC's I think is above average. They've got two really good linebackers. Mason Cobb is a really good player, and the linebacker transfer that they brought in from Oregon State this year. Arnold is the last name. He's a really good player. And in the secondary, I would give USC an advantage. They brought in four transfer defensive backs who have all been good in college, and they still have Jalen Smith back at cornerback, who's a good player. LSU at safety, Major Burns is an elite player, a player that is one of the best safeties in the SEC. But the cornerback position, I think they are quite a bit behind USC this season. And defensively, LSU missed out on nearly all of the good players that entered the transfer portal this offseason. And if you're an LSU fan, don't tell me in the comments that Brian Kelly just didn't try to get any of those players, because you know as well as I do that he tried, because LSU's defense was terrible last year. And even though Brian Kelly is a good recruiter. He's not like Dabo Sweeney that just pretends that the transfer portal doesn't exist. He just couldn't get any of them hardly to come over to LSU. And USC's defense, it's not the players that would be the reason why they would struggle. I don't think they've got a lot of good players on their defense this year, and I don't really even think it'd be the scheme this time because they've got a good coordinator now. If their defense struggles again, I think it will be because Lincoln Riley is still in charge, and until I see his defense play well, I can't pick them to play well. So that's why I still think that USC will struggle defensively in this game and give up a lot of points. Now, I would feel a lot better about USC's defense if they do play well in this game. But I think this will be a lot of back and forth scoring. And I do, though, think that USC's defense will come up with one big stop. Maybe they'll get a turnover and it'll get them the win. So my final prediction for the game is USC 48, LSU 45. So that will be it for this video. And thanks for watching. And please subscribe, and I'll be back very soon.